What's up, Suplex Rumble family? If you thought 2026 couldn't get any crazier in professional wrestling, you were dead wrong. The internet is exploding right now with rumors that could change everything we know about modern wrestling. I'm talking about The Shield, possibly reuniting. And yes, that means Jon Moxley potentially standing side by side with Seth Rollins and Roman Reigns once again. But before we dive into this absolute bombshell of a story, smash the like button, hit subscribe, and ring that notification bell because you do not want to miss a single update on this developing situation. Let's get into it. Alright, let me set the stage for you. For those who might be newer to wrestling or need a refresher, The Shield wasn't just another faction. When these three men burst through the crowd back in late 2012, they didn't just debut, they revolutionized professional wrestling as we knew it. Roman Reigns, Seth Rollins, and Jon Moxley back when he was going by a different ring name in a certain Connecticut-based promotion weren't just three guys thrown together. They were a brotherhood forged in combat. They dominated everyone in their path. They held gold. They main event the biggest shows on the planet. And most importantly, they created moments that will live forever in wrestling history. But here's the thing about brotherhood in professional wrestling, it rarely lasts. Seth Rollins turned on his brothers in 2014 in what many consider one of the most shocking betrayals in wrestling history. The faction eventually reunited for brief periods, but it was never quite the same. And then, Moxley made the bold decision to leave WWE entirely in 2019, seeking creative freedom and a chance to redefine himself. Since then, these three men have taken completely different paths. Roman Reigns became the tribal chief, the undisputed face of WWE, holding championship gold and carrying the company on his shoulders. Seth Rollins evolved into the visionary, a revolutionary character who's pushed creative boundaries week after week. And Jon Moxley? He became the heart and soul of AEW, a world champion multiple times over, the embodiment of pure, unfiltered wrestling passion. So the question everyone's asking is simple: how could these three possibly reunite when they're not even in the same company? Well, that's where things get interesting. Let's talk about what's been happening over the past few weeks, because the clues have been everywhere if you've been paying attention. WWE has been running these mysterious vignettes during their programming. Dark, gritty footage. A figure in shadows. The phrase, "he's coming home," flashing across the screen. And here's where it gets good: the silhouette. It looks exactly like someone who used to wear tactical gear and ride with the Hounds of Justice. Now, WWE is no stranger to mystery man angles. We've seen them executed brilliantly and we've seen them fall flat. But this one feels different. The production quality, the timing, the way both Seth Rollins and Roman Reigns have been dropping cryptic hints in their promos, it all points to something massive. Let's break down the evidence. 2 weeks ago, during a backstage segment, Seth Rollins was asked about potential allies in his ongoing rivalry. His response? He just smiled and said, "Sometimes the past has a way of catching up with the present." Cryptic, right? Then, just this past week, Roman Reigns cut a promo where he talked about brotherhood and loyalty. He mentioned that the bloodline is family, but some bonds are forged in a different kind of fire. The camera lingered on his face just a little too long. That's not accidental, people. That's storytelling. But here's the absolute kicker, and this is where the wrestling world lost its collective mind. Reports started circulating that Jon Moxley's AEW contract situation might be more flexible than we thought. Now, I'm not saying he's leaving AEW. I'm not saying he's signing with WWE. But in modern professional wrestling, we've seen forbidden doors open that we never thought possible. Could this be a one-time appearance? A special attraction match? A limited deal that allows Moxley to work both promotions? Or are we looking at something even bigger? The possibilities are absolutely endless, and that's what makes this so exciting. Now, some of you might be thinking, okay, cool story, but why does this matter so much? Let me tell you exactly why a Shield reunion in 2026 would be absolutely monumental for professional wrestling. First, let's talk about the current landscape. WWE is in the middle of an incredible period of creative momentum. The storytelling has been exceptional. The roster is stacked with talent. But there's something special about nostalgia mixed with fresh storytelling. A Shield reunion isn't just about bringing back something old, it's about showing how these three men have evolved. Think about it. Roman Reigns isn't the same powerhouse enforcer he was in 2014. He's a calculating, manipulative champion who's held the industry in a chokehold. Seth Rollins isn't the architect of the original betrayal anymore, he's become this avant-garde performer who marches to his own beat. And Moxley? He's proven that he doesn't need the machine behind him. He's raw. He's real. He's everything wrestling fans claim they want. So imagine these three versions of themselves coming together. Not as the wide-eyed rookies who stormed through the crowd, but as seasoned veterans who've been to war separately and now choose to align again. The storytelling potential is absolutely infinite. You could have internal conflict. Can Roman, who's used to being the guy, share the spotlight? Can Seth be trusted after all these years? Can Moxley adapt back to the sports entertainment environment after years of creative freedom? These are real questions that would drive real drama. And from a business perspective, this is money. The Shield was never fully capitalized on in their prime. They were split up just as they were reaching their peak. A reunion now, with all three men at the top of their game, with a decade of story to pull from? That's main event material for the biggest shows of the year. That's merchandise flying off shelves. That's viral moments and social media exploding. Plus, think about the dream matches. The Shield versus the Bloodline? The Shield versus Judgment Day? The Shield in some kind of cross-promotional super show? Wrestling fans have been dreaming of these possibilities for years. Now, I wouldn't be doing my job if I didn't pump the brakes just a little bit and talk about the challenges and obstacles that make this reunion complicated. Let's address the elephant in the room. Jon Moxley is currently signed to AEW. He's been one of their top stars, a multiple-time world champion, and a locker room leader. AEW invested heavily in Moxley when he made the jump in 2019, and he's delivered in every possible way. Would Tony Khan really let one of his top stars appear for the competition, even for a special event? Here's where it gets interesting though. We've seen unprecedented cooperation between wrestling companies in recent years. WWE and New Japan worked together. We've seen appearances across promotions that would have been impossible 5 years ago. The wrestling world is changing, and business is business. There's also the creative question. Moxley left WWE specifically because he was frustrated with the creative process. He wanted freedom to be himself, to tell grittier stories, to wrestle the style he wanted. Would he be willing to step back into that environment, even temporarily? Or have things changed enough that he'd be given the creative freedom to make it work? Then there's Roman and Seth's perspective. These guys have built incredible individual legacies. Do they need a Shield reunion? Or would it somehow diminish what they've accomplished separately? That's a legitimate concern from a storytelling standpoint. But here's what I think: if done right, a Shield reunion doesn't diminish anyone. It elevates everyone. It's a celebration of how far they've come while acknowledging where they started. And in an era where wrestling fans are more passionate and engaged than ever, giving them this moment could be absolutely magical. So what should we be watching for in the coming weeks? What are the signs that this is actually happening versus just wishful thinking from the wrestling community? First, pay attention to contract reporting. Reliable wrestling journalists will start getting information if something legitimate is in the works. We'll hear about negotiations, about potential appearances, about the structure of any potential deal. Follow the credible reporters, not just the rumor mills. Second, watch the programming closely. WWE is masterful at planting seeds. If this reunion is happening, the breadcrumbs will continue. More vignettes, more cryptic promos from Seth and Roman, maybe even subtle references that only hardcore fans would catch. Every detail matters in modern wrestling storytelling. Third, and this is big, watch for schedule alignments. If Moxley suddenly has a gap in his AEW schedule around a major WWE premium live event, that's not a coincidence. Wrestling promotions don't just randomly give their top stars time off during important periods. Also, pay attention to social media. In today's wrestling landscape, wrestlers often drop hints on their personal accounts. A cryptic tweet, an old photo posted at a strategic time, a subtle like or follow. These things can be major clues for what's coming. And finally, trust your instincts as a wrestling fan. We've been trained to spot the patterns, to feel when something big is brewing. The energy around this potential reunion feels different than typical internet speculation. There's smoke here, and where there's smoke, look. Whether the Shield reunion happens next week, next month, or not at all, the fact that we're even discussing it shows the lasting impact these three men had on professional wrestling. Roman Reigns, Seth Rollins, and Jon Moxley changed the game. They influenced an entire generation of performers. And the idea that they might stand together one more time? That's the stuff wrestling dreams are made of. As wrestling fans, we live for these moments. We live for the surprises, the returns, the reunions that make us jump off our couches and mark out like we're kids again. Whether you're Team WWE, Team AEW, or just Team Wrestling, a Shield reunion would be special for all of us. So I want to hear from you, Suplex Rumble family. Drop a comment below. Do you think Moxley is the mystery man? Do you want to see the Shield reunite? And if it happens, what's your dream match for them? Let's discuss this in the comments. If you enjoyed this breakdown, absolutely destroy that like button, subscribe to Suplex Rumble for all your wrestling news and analysis, and hit that notification bell so you don't miss any updates on this developing story.